Hey and welcome to Neverwinter with Aragon. So time to show my rogue DPS build. With this build you can get all of your offensive stats green. Now that's not really the objective, and that's with running an augment, which you ideally should not. So we'll be running a striker and our stats will look like this. In combat you will end up with crit strike and crit severity at 90%, with combat advantage getting to 90% with somebody running the tutor companion, and power to 90% with a healer and tank running Mystic and Runic Aura, along with then a full Raptor party. And that comes with 71% accuracy. There's a lot of different optimizations you can do, switching different gear pieces out, and we'll discuss that later on in the build. There will be timestamps on the play bar below, so you can skip to any section you're most interested in. We initially start out with our power setup, and this is for single target boss fights, where you're maximizing your damage against that one enemy. And yes, we are using Path of Blades because it results in overall more damage combining with certain procs than, let's say, Lashing Blade would. You may note I have switched off from Skullcracker. The main reason is because it doesn't actually affect all of your damage, namely your mount power, of which there are multiple you can use in single target to maximize your single target damage. But that's the setup for single target. However, if the fight is very melee friendly and you're never gonna have to be like away from the boss to do mechanics, you could switch Cloud of Steel over to Gloaming Cut just for the added stealth regen, and the benefit that it does a lot of damage when the target is at really low hit points. In most fights, I like to have Cloud of Steel so I can continue attacking from a distance to make sure I have my daily power for the next artifact call. But when you are switching to an AoE fight, beating up multiple groups of enemies, you just have to switch two encounter powers out, Smoke Bomb and Blade Flurry, keeping your Path of Blades. And then you'll be using your Whirlwind of Blades as your daily power instead of like Shocking Execution. And that's it. Very simple. So now we move to our rotation. In an AoE fight, when you're going to go up against a pack of enemies, I recommend starting with Path of Blades, jumping in, going Smoke Bomb, going to Stealth, Blade Flurry, and then Blade Flurry again. And at that point, everything should be dead bar one or two enemies, which you'll finish off with a flurry of Duelist. And when you do have your daily power, your artifact and your mount power, and you're going up against a particularly tough group, again, start with Path of Blades, put that Smoke Bomb down, go into Stealth, you can use your artifact, your daily power, and then your mount power, and yeah, Blade Flurry from Stealth, and at that point it might be overkill and everything's already dead. Now I would recommend having like the Envenomed Storyteller Journal as your artifact, as that's, yeah, totally best in slot for AoE fights. You'll get your action points back quicker, you'll be able to get that daily power back far more often, but it's not going to be a big deal if you can just run, let's say, the Wand of Domination. It's got an excellent charm effect with it as well, along with a debuff making enemies take increased damage. But let's move to our single target rotation, where we have our Wicked Reminder and our Assassinate, and you want to be having a single target mount combat power too, like Big B's Hand will do, especially because it scales off your physical damage boost there. But again, the main objective here in single target is to really take advantage of those artifact calls. So your rotation for that would be to make sure you have your bleeds active on your boss. You want to have times 10 bleed, as we see there. Then you want to be going, yes, starting the artifact call when your allies go ahead and do so. You wait a few seconds, then go Path of Blades from Stealth, Shocking Execution, Wicked Reminder from Stealth, Mount Power, and Assassinate. And that will get you your maximum burst damage. If you do have like your belt item, your Hawk, then you want to use the Hawk just after that last Assassinate. If you have the Dragonfire, you can use it before you start your Path of Blades, as it has the tick damage. You want to get that ticks throughout the artifact call, and if there's other options as well. But that's basically it for your rotation. And when you're not in an artifact call and you're still fighting the boss, again, just go with Stealth, Path of Blades, Wicked, and Assassinate. Ideally, you want to be getting that Wicked and Assassinate within 5 seconds after using your Path of Blades from Stealth to give them the benefit. Like here, we see that rotation. We have within 5 seconds, Wicked Reminder and Assassinate. You're always using Wicked Reminder before Assassinate, because Wicked Reminder will cause the target to take 10% more damage. You don't need to worry about using Wicked Reminder from Stealth, and that's why we don't outside of an artifact call, because the bonus on it sadly does not work, reducing the enemy's critical avoidance. And the reason during the artifact call that we use firstly Path of Blades from Stealth is so that we would gain the extra 10% damage from leaving Stealth. Then we use our daily power, which then procs the Invisible Infiltrator, giving us 5% more damage for 5 seconds and refilling our stealth meter. That is why we drain that stealth meter again with Wicked Reminder from Stealth, and then we can go and use our mount power. And we have combined 2 stacks of Cunning Ambusher, 20% plus the 5% from Invisible Infiltrator plus the 10% from Wicked Reminder to throw that all onto our mount combat power and our Assassinate for massive amounts of damage. And yes, with Assassinate, you ideally want to be behind your enemy. I can't do that right here because the enemy just wants to attack me, but when you have a tank, you want to be, again, behind the boss, opposite the tank. And that is about it for your rotation. So we move to our statistics. What you want to focus on as a DPS? Well, what you want to do is prioritize first your power, then your combat advantage, then your critical severity, then critical strike, and then accuracy. However, make sure to not leave out bonuses that are just going to provide you raw damage. Like this ring when in Underdark is going to give you 6% additional damage. This headpiece is going to give you 5% additional damage. This ring is overall going to give you about 5% total damage. That's something you have to test. And so there are generally certain choices where you want to prioritize damage over said stats. And that is usually when it's about equivalent. So this ring can give me 6% damage. That is generally a little bit better than a ring that would give me like 5% stats, or even a ring that would give me 7% stats. 6% damage will still be slightly better. So just use that as a rule of thumb. And ultimately you want to be going for these stats, and lastly also stacking as much damage as you can. And that comes from mainly item level and some weapons which have added damage. So let's move to our gear. This is the current setup I'm using for the new dungeon, the latest endgame content. So now let's discuss each of the gear pieces and alternatives that you could use for them. So this headpiece comes from your Master Demonweb Pits dungeon. Again, the alternative is the Serene Hood from your Dragon Hunts. If you want to use this exact setup but don't have, let's say, a damage in Underdark headpiece, then you can totally use the 10% accuracy Enchanted Bregan piece, just from your Mensa Branson campaign, upgraded with Narbondulin, the Demonweb Pits. The armor piece simply comes from Dragon Hunts. The arms piece comes from, again, the Demonweb Pits master version. An alternative is the Mighty Vambracers, again from Dragon Hunts. Or if you're in content where you never take a hit, then the Mighty Vambracers are kind of pointless. You would use the Tactful Gloves for the recharge speed, again from Dragon Hunts. The weapon set here, we're using the perfect weapons. They are from the Demonweb Pits, and I would recommend you try and obtain them. Again, from the master version though, so not many people will for quite some time. So alternatively, you would use, when still gearing up your character, like the Blaspheme weapons or the Stormforged weapons coming from the North Dark Reaches campaign. You progress through these middle tasks here and you'll get the Stormforged weapons. A very good set, especially in Underdark and AoE content. But this build orientates around the perfect weapons, which have the highest item level and the most base damage. Then for our boots, we have again these Abyss ones from the Master Demonweb Pits. An alternative is the Wasteland Wanderers. You're just going to have to do your advanced dungeon, the Vault of Stars, on hardcore mode and just beat up the first mini-boss. You can look up mini-boss farm for Vault of Stars and get those Wasteland Wanderers. I believe the successor boots, not sure if you can still obtain them, from the Lair of the Mad Mage, also give this 5% combat advantage bonus. Alternatively, you could use the Bregan one with the crit severity. upgrade that as well to give a little bit more crit severity having it enchanted. For our neck and waist set, we are currently using the Marilith set. This is a new set from the Demonweb Pits. You can actually just run the advanced version and, if you're up for the task, the master version to obtain that set, or just buy it from the auction house. Alternatively, I have a separate build which uses very little changes that you run with the Mythalar set. This set will overall give you the most personal damage. If you're in a team which somebody's already running the Marilith set, then there is no point you using it as well. The reason Mythalar is so good on a rogue is because you have a lot of fast hits. Duelist Flurry combined with Path of Blades will allow Mythalar to deal like 5% of your damage there with raw pressure. In order to run this set, in order to run Mythalar versus Marilith, we're using then just the Golden Cat instead, and we're also using Wildstorm Elixir instead of Sunlord's Gift Elixir. And that's really it for the changes. You end up with pretty much the same stats. But again, if nobody in your party is running the Marilith set, it is absolutely best in slot to increase not just your damage, but everybody else in your party. Then for our rings, we are using the Band of Air. Again, in order to obtain that, you will have to do the hardcore version of Vault of Stars and get lucky on your drops from the mini bosses. If you do not have a Band of Air and don't intend to go through that heavy grind, well, I would recommend you try and get the Vault of Stars rings. That would give you like the Beauty one and the Illustrator's Obligation. They'll give you a bunch of stats and a set which will allow you to deal a little bit more damage and gain some forte. And also that Lothian Repulsion ring, it's great, but very hard to obtain. You have to do the Master Exempted Reliquary. So I think that's outside of a lot of people's reach. So you would use something from the Master Demonweb Pits instead, giving just the extra accuracy there. Or again, you would use from your Master Temple of the Spider. These rings, this one will give you a bunch of accuracy rating as well, along with then some extra combat advantage, where you could then switch these boots out to something, or even switch this armor piece out to something that would give like some damage in Underdark, or some extra critical strike when in a team, or even this armor piece with a bunch of accuracy. And from there, you might still be using rings from Dragon Hunts. They're pretty useful. You can get ones that give 5% to encounter power damage. The Soothsayer ring with 7% to critical strike. And keep in mind, if you're running against certain enemy types, like dragons, there's a 10% damage ring for that. A 10% damage ring for undead. A 10% damage ring against beholders. So just be aware of those, and those are definitely rings you might want to use. But ultimately, you'll want to try go for that Band of Air. It performs fairly well on a rogue. Again, doing like 5% of your overall damage with its Touch of Wind. That is total damage, so it'll perform better than something that gives you only like 6% damage with the Repulsion ring. And again, the Repulsion ring only being so good in Underdark, will totally switch it to the Platinum Abyssal Loop ring when I'm running alternative content. For the shirt and pants, we've got the new ones. These ones simply come from your heroic encounters in the Demonweb Pits zone. Now, if you're running against Drow and in the Demonweb Pits, if it's the second boss or the third boss, make sure to switch to this Bregan shirt. It gives 8% damage against Drow and spiders. And if you're in a group where nobody's running, let's say the Tutor, and you want to get your combat advantage to 90%, well, you can switch to the Corroded shirt of the Dragon Cult. It'll give that combat advantage. The pants you want to be running, these ones that just have the over 2000 critical strike. And if you're not in a group running like the Raptors, you can also switch your pants out to the new ones, which are like these covert ones. They'll give you 5% power when only one teammate or more is further than 30 feet away, contrary to what it says. And so we move quickly to modifications. We have our kits. Here we have the head piece with accuracy, the armor piece with critical severity, the arms with power, and the boots with accuracy. Those kits will come from Professions or just the auction house. One of our neck pieces, we have awareness on it because we have our combat advantage maxed out. There wouldn't be any point having more, but usually you'll just have combat advantage in like our rings here and the waist piece. But again, we have awareness in that because again, we're maxed out on that combat advantage. So we move to our enchantments. This is our current setup. We use these 4 in our offense. It doesn't matter what you use in defense, so just use whatever you have available to you. Just if you want to have like the Mythalar set, you need to have like 2 garnets and 2 citrines, as well as then with the Marilith set, an amethyst and the cobalt. You want a garnet in your utility. You want to be running generally in content Rage of Flames and Devil's Precision, but that Rage of Flames you want to switch to like Demon Slayer against the first boss in Demonweb Pits, and the second boss and last boss you want to run like Drow Slayer. You can also run Demon Slayer against the last boss. Loth is a demon, and yeah, then you want to be running like Dragon Slayer against dragons, etc. Combat enchantment, absolutely the Mythic Lightning Flash. And bonus, you want like that recharge speed ideally, or you could have movement speed if you want to run through a dungeon quicker. Then we move to our artifacts, and well, you want to be having the ones with 1500 item level, ideally, for the min-max. However, if you're not in endgame content, you'll have no trouble just using, let's say, as before, the Dragonbone Blades, the Assassin's Dice, Tentacle Rod, Mythalar, Demogorgon's Reach. They're all fine, just a little bit lower item level. I wouldn't go out of your way to spend millions to get these and then to get them upgraded just for a little bit more item level. But I'm showing like a maxed out build here, so we've got to go and use them. The Storyteller books, yes, are still really good in scaled content, but when you're not scaled, like the new dungeon, at least on the master mode, you want to be going for like as much item level as possible for that damage and hit points. Just make sure to have that artifact for your set. So that's the Marilith mask here with the Marilith set, and if you're running the Mythalar set, then make sure you're running the Mythalar artifact, of course. And here I've switched out from the Realm Engine Core. Instead of the Realm Engine Core, you can also have like your Eye of Odran before, or your Rod of Pain. They all have that 1500 item level, so we'll do good there. Also, a quick note on your primary artifact, you might want a debuff artifact that actually benefits to your team a little bit more than, let's say, the Wand of Domination, or actually any of these other 3, which give us 7.5%. It's not going to be such a big deal, but you'd be better off running one of these like top 10, which actually give 10% instead of just a 7.5%. So now we move to our race and ability scores. And for this build, absolutely Wood Elf. And we're just running the ability scores of Strength for the physical damage boost and Dexterity for the movement speed and critical severity. If you get that critical severity to 90% and have more than that and don't need the Dexterity for the crit severity, switch to Charisma. Then we move to our companions. And yes, this is the setup we use, except the Augment Companion. We don't use the Augment Companion. We use it to make our stats look pretty, but generally you will use a Striker Companion. So in single target, you'll use like the Pseudo Dragon, or the Batiri, or you could even use the Paranoid Delusion, not as great, or the Black Death Scorpion. I like it particularly when you're running solo boss fights like the new Abyss hunts. And then if you're running AoE fights, you want to be running like the Minotaur. Then there's Regis, the Shadowkai Witch. Minotaur just helps group up those enemies so you can kill them all nice and quickly, have them all in the area of the Smoke Bomb and your Blade Flurry, and it just makes killing things nice and easy. For our equipment here, we have from the North Dark Reaches just 3 of these, giving the accuracy and combat advantage. We have precision here. However, again, you could switch your headpiece over to like the Serene Hood or the new Abyss one for the critical strike. And then I would switch this over to something that'll help your team, like Armor Break, like Vulnerability, or even Dulled Senses. Those 3 are the best for increasing your team's damage. If all of those are covered, you have other players in your team using them, then of course Perfect Vision for accuracy. But right now we're using Precision because we're also trying to use the Underdark damage helmet there. For our crit powers, we've got Minsk there, we've got the Raptor, Neverwinter Knight, the Batiri, and the Alchemist. Now, Minsk and the Batiri, you kind of want to switch out when running AoE content. You'd want to run the Phase Spider here, and you'd want to run like the Black Dragon Ion Stone here for the critical strike. Alternatively is Grumpf from the new Chaos Between Realms right here. And when we do switch to our Mythalar set, we'll miss a bit of combat advantage, so we are using the Golden Cat instead of Alchemist. Then we move to our mounts. In our current tab here with the combat power, we're using Bigby's Hand for single target. Alternatively, you can use the Golden Warhorse there with its Golden Touch, or the Giant Toad with its Tongue Lash. It has to be the legendary Giant Toad, or then just Tunnel Vision. They'll all do fine. It's just Bigby's Hand will have the highest magnitude, plus it deals like physical damage. And if you're running AoE content, I would recommend the Pegasus here with the Inspiration. Deals a ton of damage in a large area, or you could run the Divine Intervention from the Celestial Wings, or even the Vortex from the legendary Flying Carpet to help group up enemies. For our crit bonus, we have Ferocity. In our stable here, this is our setup. We've got a bunch of 4-slot mounts, and it won't particularly matter. Ideally, of course, you want to have an Executioner's Covenant and a Mender's Covenant to help get those stats. Don't go out of your way trying to get the exact mounts I have. Have a look at the different costs. They will give different bonuses, but like Accursed Resolve, Lionheart's Preservance don't really matter. We could run alternatively a Artificer's Persuasion, but it's not the biggest deal on a rogue. But you do want to have like a Warlord Inspiration, and right now the only mount with that is the 90k item level mount. But I'm sure there will become one down the line that'll be much more accessible. So you can just wait, or just use something else, or use a 3-slot mount instead for that. For the insignias themselves, you can see we have a bunch of skill, brutality, and aggression, with then like one dominance here, and then another dominance here. For the collars, the only real important ones is the encounter power damage and the crit severity. The rest don't matter, but I would go with Rough Astral Diamonds, Stamina Regen, and Movement Speed. Then we move to our boons, and here you can see we're just running all the offensive ones here, so the first 2 lines there. Then you want to make sure you get the Movement Speed, the damage against fiends and demons. You want to get the damage against the cultists. Then while you're at it, you can pick up the damage against dinosaurs and then also against undead. After that, you can just pick up these defensive ones, plus Lingering Medicine. And on tier 5, we've got the Forte, and we've got the Recharge Speed. For our guild, we've got the Power, the Defense, and then here, if you're running tough content, make sure to run Revive Sickness. Then for our consumables, we have Flask of Potency, Squash Soup, Sunlord's Gift Elixir, and Ratatouille. However, if you're running the Mythalar set, you will miss like a huge bunch of dexterity, and that's why I would switch to the Wildstorm Elixir for this build, and it'll fit nicely, and make sure you have green stats as well. And then for your belt items, you want that Stone of Health for the clutch heal, you want the Dragonfire ideally, and you want the Spider Totem, which of course you'll ideally upgrade to Mythic. It'll give that 1% damage against Drow, it'll help in the new dungeon, and it'll give that 2.5% combat advantage. So that is my rogue build. Hopefully this is somewhat insightful to you guys and helps you out on what to work towards with Module 26. A special thank you to all these channel members for helping me keep my channel going, and we'll see you guys around. Goodbye for now.